Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom. I'm the creator of rulingplanets.com and Christopher Renstrom Astrology. And this week, I wanted to talk to you about the solar eclipse taking place in the zodiac sign of Libra on October 2nd. Now, Libra is one of the most unique signs of the zodiac. Unique because there's no other sign like it. Zodiac comes from the Greek word zodia, which means band of animals or band of creatures. In fact, the root word of zodiac, zo, gives us our word zoo. So of all the animals and all the creatures of the zodiac, Libra stands out with the distinction of not being an animal, not being a creature, and not being a human being. In fact, Libra is a human invention. It's an instrument. The sign for Libra is the scales, and the scales is one of the oldest instruments of civilization. The scales were originally invented in Egypt, and basically, they're pretty much what you see in the image of Libra. There are two dishes which are attached to a rod. The dishes balance with one another by different objects or weights being put into each of the dishes. Now, this came in very handy on trade routes, where someone, in order to appraise the value of an item, would put it into one dish, and then into the other dish was put a counterweight. And when the scales balanced themselves, the value of that object was thus determined. As I said, this came in handy on trade routes, where you would often be doing business with merchants who didn't speak the same language that you did. And so when you put the objects onto the scale, everyone could see for themselves what the value of that object was. So Libra, being the oldest instruments created by mankind, was seen as the symbol of civilization. It was seen as the symbol of civilization because Libra was impartial. Libra was associated with the system of weights and measures. It wasn't consumed by passions or taken over by raw emotion. Libra was seen as being an impartial judge. And it's in its capacity of judgment that we see Libra, the scales of justice, outside just about any courthouse. One of the oldest depictions of Libra comes from an Egyptian image. In an Egyptian image where we see the god Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the dead in Egyptian mythology, kneeling over a scale. In one plate, he very delicately places the heart of a recently deceased person. And in the opposite plate is a feather. This feather represents the Egyptian goddess of justice, Mot. The heart is placed in one dish, opposite another dish that holds the feather, and Anubis judges their balance between the two of them. And if the heart is heavy, if the plate holding it lowers so that the plate of the feather rises, then Anubis judges this as a heavy heart. And a heavy heart was seen as being very corrupt or being evil, and was immediately fed to Ammit, the devourer of souls. Ammit was an Egyptian god that had the head of a crocodile, the torso of a lion, and the legs of a hippopotamus. So that soul was immediately devoured by this very greedy and always hungry god. But if a heart was placed in a plate and it balanced with the feather, or in some occasions was lighter than the feather itself, then Anubis judged this heart to be the heart and soul of a righteous person, and this person was immediately dispatched to heaven. So Libra was always seen as a sign of judgment in astrology. And because Libra is the zodiac sign of the autumnal equinox, equinox means equal day, equal night, it rules the time of year when after Libra, the days grow shorter and the shadows grow longer. Libra was always seen as being associated with the underworld. And when we think of the underworld in the history of astrology, we think of Anubis and his scales. Now, there have been times in the 2,500 plus years of astrology where certain zodiac signs have gone in and out of fashion. They have gone in and out of use. One of them was Ophiuchus, and another one of them was Libra. Libra was considered to be too dim a constellation by the ancient Greeks. So what they did is that they took the two lights of Libra and they added them to Scorpius to create one enormous constellation. The ancient Greeks then called Libra Chili, which means the claws. And so the two brightest stars of Libra were commonly identified as the claws of the scorpion. They still bear their Arabic names today. There's Zubin Shamali, the northern claw, which is the upper star, and then there's Zubin el Janubi, the southern claw. That's the lower star. Later on, when the Romans revised their calendar so as to have a 12-month year, they reintroduced Libra back into the zodiac. They saw the two Zubins as being equal in their luminosity. And what they also found appealing is that the constellation appeared during the autumnal equinox, the time of year when day and night were evenly divided. The Romans saw this as a point of balance, and this is why they found the image, the symbol of Libra, the scales, so appealing. This, to them, was the balance point of heaven. It was during the reign of Julius Caesar that Libra was reintroduced back into the calendar. By cutting off the claws of the scorpion to make or restore Libra, this explains why Libra and Scorpio love matches are so popular. Now, as I mentioned before in my episode on the lunar eclipse in Pisces a couple of weeks ago, there are two types of eclipses in astrology. There are solar eclipses and lunar eclipses. Solar eclipses talk about where I'm going, and lunar eclipses talk about where I've been. Now, the solar eclipse in Libra that is taking place on October 2nd is in direct response to the lunar eclipse in Libra that took place on October 14th, 2023. The lunar eclipse in October 2023 might have been associated with a sudden collapse, a downward spiral, or an unraveling of a situation that would be described by the zodiac sign of Libra. Libra rules over relationships, usually marriages, but they can also include business partnerships, contracts, and even court cases. So essentially what we're saying here is that in October of 2023, you might have experienced a collapse in an area of life that had to do with one of those situations, and that it might have taken you a very long time to get over it. So that this solar eclipse that's taking place in the zodiac sign of Libra, this solar eclipse will feel like a shot of adrenaline that's coming into your life, that's getting you up onto your feet again, where you will either get back what you lost or you will head in an entirely different direction. Now, the thing to remember about a solar eclipse is that a solar eclipse describes the period of time when the moon moves in front of the sun and blocks its light. In an allegorical fashion, how that manifests in an astrological chart is that you have this sense of moving forward in your life, but you can't really see where you're going. You're driven more by a sense of urgency, a sense of insistence, than you are by an awareness or an ability to see or to recognize. And that's because, as I said, the moon is blocking the rays of the sun. So that's going to be part of the equation that I want you to keep in mind as I describe the effect of the solar eclipse on each of the 12 zodiac signs. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind is Libra, the zodiac sign of the balance. Okay, Libra can have a lot to do with judgment. Is your judgment balanced or is it not balanced? Are you very partial about things that are going on right now and you're struggling to be impartial? Or perhaps you're too impartial and you're struggling to have more of an emotional investment like compassion or sensitivity to a situation. So the solar eclipse in Libra is going to be dealing with the idea of imbalance and you judging for yourself what feels out of whack or what feels out of balance here. So let's go ahead and talk about the 12 signs. Now, for people born under Aries, the solar eclipse in Libra has to do with you trying to wrap your mind around the idea of relationship. Aries isn't really good at relationships. They either don't really feel comfortable in one because they don't really get the idea of partnership. Aries is more of a doer. It's going to do for another person rather than embrace this idea of partnership. Or Aries really just prefers its own company, its own independence. So since October of 2024, you've been struggling with the idea of relationship. What you might have experienced was that relationship unraveling or falling apart in some way. It didn't really work out. It didn't really take. And it might have left you feeling alone. The image that I get here is really two people on a seesaw. And what might have happened is that your partner jumped off the seesaw and you went crashing down to the ground and you landed on your bottom. There might have been this sense of the partner leaving, or maybe you were the one who left. But in any case, the relationship didn't really work out. Now, Libra is very much a zodiac sign of relationship. It's very much a zodiac sign of partnership. Think of the two dishes, all right, which are two parts of the scale. So Libra wants to be with another person, and this energy is coming back into your life. Now, you might be the sort of Aries who swore off being with a person and you're not looking for anyone right now. And so maybe this energy may not appear as a romantic energy in your life. Maybe this energy might appear as a business partnership, or maybe this energy might manifest as a creative collaboration, something which introduces the idea of partnering with someone, something that introduces the idea of combining forces, of combining efforts in order to achieve a goal. This is something that, as an Aries, you can sort of get your head around, but you also have issues or problems with that. You often like to take the lead. Even if you're being particularly supportive and patient, there's a time limit to it. You don't want the other person to take forever. You expect whoever you are partnering with, maybe in a creative venture or a business venture, you expect them to keep up. What you're going to be shown in the weeks and the months ahead, in the weeks and the months following this solar eclipse in Libra on October 2nd, is you're going to be shown the way that you behave or act in a partnership or collaboration. It's almost like the other person is going to be holding up a mirror to your actions. And it's going to be less about you wanting to get your way and insisting that things be done the way that you think they should be done. And it's going to be more about you learning how to cooperate with another person. It might begin with criticisms or maybe even little squawks and arguments at first. But what will begin to dawn on you is that you don't have the only say here, that you are working with another person here. And I can actually see you sort of getting into the whole idea of this and really even enjoying it. So I think that this eclipse is going to be less about someone showing up in your life and being the perfect lover, partner, or spouse. And it's going to be more about you learning about partnering, pairing with another person, perhaps in a very different context, and then taking that information back to the realm of romance or a more intimate partnership, of taking the things that you've learned in this particular context that you're going to be working with someone else in your life, and then applying it to your love life or your romantic life, and with great success. Taurus. Now, this solar eclipse in Libra is going to hit you in a funny spot of your horoscope. It's almost like, I don't know, someone hitting you on the funny bone. You have this weird reaction to it. That's one of the ways that I like to describe a quincunx. And that is the relationship that I'm describing between Libra and Taurus. It's something that doesn't really quite fit. It's something that you're not really comfortable with, but it's also something that you want to know more about at the same time. Now, what unites Taurus and Libra is the fact that they are both ruled by the same ruling planet, Venus. And because Venus is named after the Roman goddess of love and beauty, Venus loves to play the matchmaker. It loves to bring people together in love, or it loves to bring people together in business, or it loves to bring people together in peace. But Taurus and Libra have two very different ideas of pairing. Libra is about the scales, it's about the balance. And that's the way that Libra looks at relationships. Relationships are three parts. There's one person, there's the partner, and then there's the relationship itself. Okay, so there's three entities. There's me, there's you, and then there's our relationship. There's that thing that brings us together. We never meld into one person. We're always apart, we're always different, but we're bonded to one another through a relationship. We're bonded to one another through a pledge, all right? That's not really Taurus's idea of relating. Taurus is an earth sign, and what Taurus has a tendency to do is to annex other people's things. The basic rule of thumb with the Taurus is what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine too. This is because Taurus is territorial, and Taurus is always looking to expand its territory. When Taurus partners with another person, it sort of sees that person as becoming part of Taurus's territory, as becoming part of Taurus's turf, as kind of becoming part of Taurus's emotional property. Now, this isn't because Taurus needs to possess and it needs to control. Taurus just sees itself as a provider, naturally. Whether you're a Taurus male or female, you're going to see yourself as the provider in a relationship. You're going to be the one with the secure job. You're going to be the one who's good with money. And you're going to be the one who provides the security for your relationship to thrive and for your relationship to flourish. Taurus pretty much always wants to hold the reins when it comes to financial choices and decisions. Now, as I said before, this solar eclipse in Libra is going to hit you in a very sensitive spot. If you're going to create subdivisions of yours, mine, and ours, you will experience during this solar eclipse having to give some of that back. In other words, you might have mistook a lot of ours for yours. Now, your response might be, well, I thought you said I could have it, or I thought you said I was in charge, or I thought you liked the way that things were done and the way that I had set things up. And you're going to be listening to a conversation in which the other person will be telling you, and in no uncertain terms, I think you've overreached, or I think you've overstepped your bonds here, and you're kind of getting into my business, and I want you to sort of back off a bit. Now, being a Taurus, you might have your feelings hurt, or you might be like really annoyed because you really believe that the way that you're doing things is the best way of doing things. But if you think about it, if you ask yourself basic questions like, well, how would you feel if you were in this person's shoes? Or maybe you were compensating for both sides, or maybe you were making decisions that really should have been talked through before. I think you'll begin to recognize where things had maybe gotten a little bit off. All it takes is really sort of saying, yes, I see what you're saying, instead of reaching for the excuse of like, I'm more effective or efficient, or this is a better way of doing it. Put that aside, because we're dealing with Libra energy here, and we're not dealing with Earth energy. So this isn't about efficiency or getting things done. This is about working with or getting along with another person. And sometimes those rules, which have to deal with the way that we relate to someone else, become more important than what would be determined as being efficient or effective. So take time out to hear what the other person says. Be ready to maybe relinquish some of the territory, or maybe some of the chores or the duties, or the responsibilities. And even though part of you might flinch at the prospect of someone else doing things their own way, keep an open mind about it, because you may very well be surprised. Taurus has never been a very good sign at sharing. As I said, they would rather provide for than to share their own things. So one of the lessons that you'll be learning with the solar eclipse in Libra is how to share, because share is a way of really sharing the burden. And what you'll also discover is that you'll get twice as much done and for half the effort when you've combined forces with another person. For those of you born under Gemini, this solar eclipse in Libra is going to be lovely. It's going to be heartfelt. That's because this solar eclipse is taking place in a zodiac sign which forms a trine to your own. A trine is shared energy, a shared element that exists between two zodiac signs. Gemini is an air sign, Libra is an air sign, and so there's a simpatico, there's an understanding, there's a harmony that's introduced when these two signs come into relationship with one another. I think the best way that I could describe this solar eclipse in Libra to you is as a heartfelt experience. Remember the heart when I was describing the image of Anubis weighing the two objects in the scales? The heart of a person to see if it was good or bad, and the feather of justice? Now, what I want you to focus on here is your heart. I'm not talking about whether you've been a good or a bad person. I'm talking about your heartfelt experiences in your life. Recently, your attention has been drawn to things that haven't been connected to your heart. Your attention might have been drawn to certain goals or certain ends in which you felt like you had to put your heart on hold and you had to follow your more analytical or even ambitious impulses, things that you might have felt like you had to do or that you were forced to do by circumstances. What the solar eclipse in Libra does is that it brings you back to your heart. It brings your focus away from the anxieties. It brings your focus away from the heightened need to get things done. It brings your focus away from defending the things that you've done and not wanting to give an inch. And it brings it back to your heart. What are the things that you really care about? Who are the people who matter most to you? This is what the solar eclipse in Libra is all about. Now, it may feel a little bit silly when you compare what Libra is asking you to do to focus on matters of the heart over matters of career or finances or ambition or drive. It may seem a kind of like silly or even childish thing to do, but this is what the solar eclipse is asking you to do. Somewhere along the way, you lost touch with your heart and you lost touch with why you do the things that you do. In some regards, it's almost as if maybe in the last 6 months or year, you came to be someone who was on the outside looking in. Okay, you became disconnected from the things that you are doing in your life. So what this solar eclipse is trying to do is that it's trying to rectify the balance by bringing your focus back to your heart, by bringing your focus back to your friends, reconnecting with friends, reconnecting with loved ones, reconnecting with children even, getting that sense of innocence and that sense of play again, things that are so connected to the zodiac sign of Gemini. By reconnecting with that joy, you're reconnecting with a part of you that sort of got put on the back shelf a year ago. It also is going to inform the way that you relate to people as well. Somewhere along the lines, anxiety took over, insistence took over, urgency took over, and you might not have treated people so well in the past year. You might have maybe barked at them or rolled your eyes or found them impossible and all these sorts of things. Maybe when you spoke to your friends, it was more talking about all the troubles that you were facing and the problems you needed to solve and you might have forgotten to ask the other person how they were doing or what was going on with them. A lot of times we can become a bit self-absorbed when we're fighting for our survival, when we're fighting for things that we think really, really matter. So with this kind of peace, this kind of calm that the solar eclipse in Libra is reintroducing, it's also reintroducing the beautiful cardinal virtues of the air signs, things that we need in our relationships: communication, care, good manners, etiquette, protocol, things like asking how someone else is doing, asking what they think about something, something that makes relationships and friendships more interactive. Another thing that might also appear in your life right now is feeling like you can be candid about where you are, not in a negative or critical way, but candid about your needs, candid about your cares and your concerns. And what you may also find yourself doing during this time that we have a solar eclipse in Libra is that you might find yourself apologizing for some of the things you said and for some of the things you did. An apology is such a miracle that we've been given. Apologies are what make relationships happen, okay? Because when you apologize for something, it's taking responsibility, sure, but it's also signaling to the other person that you feel bad about what had happened, that you really regret having done. And so when you apologize to someone for that, instead of manufacturing an excuse, blaming your behavior on circumstances or things that were going on, when you take that moment to say, I'm really sorry about what happened, that's a moment that really sort of stops time between you and another person. And you look into another's eyes, and you can look into another's souls, and that person can receive your apology, and that person can say, I understand, I get it. And it puts you back on the same wavelength again. You become balanced once more. And this is a gift. This is a gift that the solar eclipse in Libra will be bestowing on you on October 2nd. For people born under the zodiac sign of Cancer, this solar eclipse is foundational. It's taking place at the root of your solar chart. It's taking place in that part of the chart which is associated to hearth, home, family, roots, and tradition. It's also the part of the solar chart that's associated with the father and what's called the end of the matter. Now, that phrase, end of the matter, often gets people's attention and makes them feel a little bit like end of the matter, end of what exactly? What it's referring to, this part of the chart, this part of the solar chart that we call the imum culi, which is Latin for bottom of the sky, what it refers to is the end of one day and the beginning of another. If you think of an astrological chart as a clock, we all know that it's a circle, but if you think of it as a clock, the sun at the top of the clock is noon, and the sun at the bottom of the clock is midnight, okay? What happens at midnight? We end one day and we begin another one. Now, this is something that sort of escapes our notice because we always think of the dawn of a new day as the beginning of the day and the setting of the sun as the end of the day. And it is in terms of daylight, but the day itself ends and then a new day begins at the bottom of the chart, at the imum culi. So that's why this period of time is associated with bringing things to a close. That can be bringing things to a close, dealing with a property matter. That can be bringing things to a close with a family issue or dispute. That could be bringing things to a close with a chapter ending and you're going on to a new chapter. This happens when kids leave the nest, when they move out of their parents' home and go and find homes of their own. You might be the parent that's feeling the empty nest syndrome, or you might be the kid who's like, bye, mom and dad, and going off and like, oh boy, I've got to go and set up my own home here. Both excited and maybe a little bit apprehensive at the same time. There may be a move, a relocation, a chapter ending, a new chapter beginning. But the other thing that I want you to keep in mind here is that Libra is an air sign that is symbolized by the scales. There are two dishes that make up the scales and that create the balance. Libra has a natural concern when it comes to the concerns of others. And if you're not saying goodbye to an old house and moving on into a new one, you may be helping members of your family settle their affairs. Maybe their house is being sold and you're helping them with the sale of the house. The solar fourth house has a lot to do with basements. So maybe there might be an excavation that's going on, like going through old things and helping maybe older family members get rid of old garbage or old things or set up sales of items or something along those lines. Now, what could also be going on during this period of time where you're bringing one chapter of your life to an end and starting a new one is that there could be the return of a family member from your past. Maybe it was a family member that you didn't really get along with, you didn't have much to say. Maybe you even parted on negative terms. This might even be a parent or a step-parent. The reason I say that is because the fourth house is a parental house. So maybe your parents separated or divorced, and you haven't spoken to one parent, and this parent is coming back into your life in some way. Maybe it's a loved one or a relative who is reemerging and whom you're going to have to spend some time with. All right, this person might be in trouble. This person might have need of you. This person may be really focused on making amends, on trying to rebuild the bond between the two of you. Now, part of you may very well be like, I've got nothing to say to this person. We've got nothing in common. Things didn't end on a good note. And I may not despise you, but I don't really have anything to say to you either. What Libra is asking you to do is to open your heart to this person, to spend some time with the other half. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with their point of view. It doesn't mean that you have to forgive them. It doesn't mean that you have to be at their beck and call. What the solar eclipse in Libra is asking you to do is to spend some time with them. It might be because there's an errand or a chore or something that they need from you. But in spending time with them, you may grow to appreciate their perspective. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it. And it doesn't have to mean that you switch your alliances, maybe from one family member to another. But what it will do is give you a more balanced view of your past. It will give you a more balanced view of your family. But on a deeper level, it's going to answer some questions and issues that you've had. Some things will begin to shift in their placement. Some pieces of the puzzle will begin to fit in a different sort of way. And this will give you a different sense of your family and your family history, one that's more real, one that's more human, and one that's more fair and compassionate. If you're born near the zodiac sign of Leo, then the solar eclipse in Libra is going to be a magnificent time for you. That's because Leo and Libra form a natural sextile in the zodiac. We have 4 elements in astrology: water, earth, air, and fire. These 4 elements are divided into 2, what we call complementary elements. Water and earth are complementary to one another. These we call the feminine or the yin energy, and air and fire are complementary to one another. These we call masculine or yang energy. So with this complementary energy coming back into your life right now, you're going to feel like you've suddenly gotten your groove back, that all of a sudden you're very excited about prospects, you're looking forward to future opportunities, and people are looking at you in a different way. People are looking at you in the way that they used to look at you. For some time now, you've been feeling overlooked and maybe even a bit invisible in your life. But now, with this solar eclipse taking place in the zodiac sign of Libra, you're going to feel like you have your sparkle again, like you have your effervescence again, and that people are suddenly paying attention to the things you have to say and are very interested in the things that you want to do. So much so that they might even want to help you in the doing of them. They may even be offering or volunteering in ways to help you to reach your ends, to get to your goals. What we have going on with this solar eclipse in Libra is that it's going to reshuffle the familiar cast of characters in your life. What I want you to think of is musical chairs. Did you ever play musical chairs when you were a little kid? Okay, you know that there was a circle of chairs that was set up and the music would play and you would walk around the chairs. And when the music stopped, everyone had to dash towards a chair and claim it as their own. And then next time, when you got up out of the chairs, one chair was removed, so you had to race even faster to go and get that chair. And clearly one person was going to be left out. And so the game went on and on and on. Well, a solar eclipse in Libra for you is like a wonderful cosmic game of musical chairs. Okay, you can feel the music playing, it stops, and then you're going to be eyeing that chair that you're going to be racing towards, all right? And so you'll go and you'll get that, of course. I mean, Leos always do, when they go and get the things that they, want, that they keep an eye on. But what you'll be finding over the next few weeks and even months is that you wind up sitting next to different people each time. You know that there are these changes that are taking place, that you're meeting new people, that you're being introduced to acquaintances who can help you out in some way, that there may be friends of friends who can facilitate something that you want to get done. What happens here is that it suddenly enlivens you. It suddenly excites you about all the possibilities of your day-to-day life. Doors that felt like they were closed before suddenly open, not the old closed doors, but new ones. You discover new avenues and new ways of thinking and new ways to achieve your ends. But this is also a time for changing your thinking cap, for rewriting the script. Let's say you're used to opportunities coming to you in your life. You're used to people coming to you in your life. This might be a period of time in which you pursue an opportunity, or in which you go to the person instead of waiting for the person to go to you. Another thing that might be going on, just to sort of like shake it up a bit, change it up a bit, is that this might be a time in which you deliberately choose to do something that doesn't come easy, to answer the challenge of trying to master something that you're not really all that good at, but you've always wanted to try to master it as well. This changing the way of your thinking, this changing the people that you associate with, not only does it shake up the sort of status quo in a fun and playful way, it may also introduce you to possibilities, talents, and skills that you didn't think you had. All of this is done in the service of broadening and widening your horizons. If you're born under the zodiac sign of Virgo, then this solar eclipse in Libra is going to herald a change in your finances and the way that you make money. Now, I know just even saying something like that is enough to send chills down the spine of any earth sign. Change in finances, a change in the way that I make money. Oh no, I better batten down the hatches. I'm heading towards disaster. That's not what's going on here. What's going on here is that a Libran perspective is being introduced into the way that you handle and build your finances. As I said earlier, a solar eclipse is when the moon comes in front of the sun and blocks its rays. We can have a sense of urgency and we can have a sense of insistence, but not the clearest idea of knowing where we're going or recognizing what's up. We know that we need to go in a new direction, but we're not really clear what that new direction is. So there's a kind of temporary blindness, for lack of a better way of putting it. What's fascinating about this eclipse is that your ruling planet Mercury is in such close proximity to it. Okay, in other words, as the moon is coming in front of the sun and blocking its rays, Mercury is also beneath the rays of both the sun and the moon. It's forming a conjunction. It's caught up in the shadow of the eclipse. So what this is going to emphasize even more is a feeling of trying to see how things are going to work out, but not being able to see it. All right, that's going to be the natural anxiety or nervousness that you may feel. And perhaps by my just describing that, that might put you at ease. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind is that Mercury, being your ruling planet, the planet of the mind, that your ability to see your solution, this being able to figure out where to go from here, this isn't going to be evident right away. It's probably going to emerge in the next few weeks and maybe a month or so. So in a way, you're kind of flying blind because of this eclipse. But what's nice about it is that it forces you to take things one day at a time. It forces you to sort of like find your way. It forces you to put your thinking out of your mind and into your hands as you try to reach for and to touch and to find your way down a new and very different path. So what I said is that there's going to be a change that takes place in your finances, in the way that you make money. You may already know about it. There may have been news or information about a dissolution of a company or a breakup of a firm or a partnership in some way, something unraveling that is going to have an impact on you. And so you may know that this is coming down the pike, and you may also be very apprehensive about it. Who wouldn't be in a situation like that? But as I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, what's being introduced here is the Libran perspective. There's a different way that Virgo approaches a problem and Libra approaches a problem. What a Virgo will do, being an earth sign, is naturally draw upon its own resources, go through its thinking, and try to figure out a way forward. Virgos solve problems like basically working out a crossword puzzle. You know that there's a solution, but you have to just sort of work out the combinations and recombinations of information to hit upon the answer. But the natural proclivity of a Virgo is to rely on oneself, to say, like, I'll figure it out. Libra is a people person zodiac sign. The most valuable resources for all the air signs, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, the air signs rule over relationships. They rule over cooperative efforts. The most valuable resources for any air sign are their human resources. It's the people they know, but it may also be the people they meet, and it may be the people that they greet. Okay, so Libra is very fond of asking questions of other people to get their input, to see how they see it, what their perspective is. Do they have information that the Libra doesn't really have? Virgos tend to question more through analysis or deduction, or, where did I go wrong in calculating those figures? What did I not, add into the equation? The Libran perspective is inviting you to ask people about what's going on. Okay, you may be asking them for advice. You may be consulting with them. You may be asking them to make introductions. You may be asking, hey, are there openings, with wherever you're working or something along those lines? Or how can I connect with so-and-so? So this is what's being introduced into this eclipse. Nothing is happening in your life that's going to be a sudden, this is it, it's over, you're on your own, you're tossed out onto the street. What you can do are bring up the more Libran talents of negotiating, of asking for more time, of working out a transition period, of seeing if someone knows someone, if your resume could be introduced by a friend of a friend to someone else. Drawing on human resources, not only for information, but also for contacts. You may even find that you're moving into an area of work that's more collaborative, that's more working with other people, that it's less solitary, less niche identified, less working on your own. So anything that involves you working with other people or collaborating with other people or cooperating with other people, this is the way for you to go. Okay, so if these are the introductions, if these are the opportunities, if these are the possibilities that present themselves right now as you are going through this transition in the way that you make your money, these are the avenues that I would strongly encourage you to follow, because what you're going to find is that not only are people there to help you, but you're moving into a whole new area of your life, which will be defined less by you serving other people and more by you working with them in a more equal capacity. Hello, Libra. This solar eclipse that will be taking place in your zodiac sign on October 2nd is going to impact you most of all. Remember that the solar eclipse is a period of time in which the moon comes in front of the sun and it blocks its rays. It kind of creates a blindness, an absence of light in the zodiac sign where it appears. This is what's going to happen to you. You will be filled with a very strong sense of urgency. You will be filled with a very strong sense of insistence that you need to go in one particular direction, something that's different from what you have been doing before. But you're not going to have the clearest idea of what it is. What you're wrestling with during this period of time, Libra, is a feeling of imbalance, a feeling that things are off and you're having a very hard time trying to get them right. You're going to feel like you're either coming down too heavily on the side of me and there's not enough we in your thinking, or you're going to feel like you're coming down too heavily on the side of we and that there's not enough me. For instance, let's say you're coming down too heavily on the side of me. All right, you're going to have a very strong sense that only you know the way to go, that the way that you want to do something is the right way to do it, and that everyone else should fall into line with it. And if people aren't falling into line with your thinking, then you're going to change around the people so that you find the ones who are going to fall in line with your thinking. So this might be a very martial period for you, where you are convinced that you're alone with this, and that you're more farsighted, more prescient than everyone else is, or that people are sort of just mucking up the works, and that it's up to you to salvage or to rescue the situation. And so you've gotten very insistent. Now, obviously, there are going to be people in your life who are like, hey, what's come over you? Why do you shut me out? Or why do you talk over me? Or why do you ignore the things that I have to say? You've really sort of grabbed hold of the wheel of the car and you're pushing the pedal to the metal and you're going the way that you want to go. I don't think that what you're doing is going to achieve anything that's positive or constructive. When one is feeling this urgency, when one is feeling this insistence, there's a sense that I have to focus on just this. As you can imagine, you're not very open-minded. And that should be a cue to you. You were born under a zodiac sign that is a really good listener, that asks probing questions, that really seeks other people's opinions and input, as well as their perspectives. So if you feel like your vision is narrowed, that you've gotten overly focused on one way of doing things, if you're not doing the thing that Librans always do, which is listening to the other side of the story, okay, Libras always believe that there are two sides of the story. If you're not listening to the other side of the story, then you know that you're in trouble, all right? That you know that you are off balanced and that your present course isn't going to result in anything good. So what you want to do is really try to put on the brakes or bring things down to a slow, take in what other people have to say, take in their input, and really turn to them in terms of conversation and dialogue so that you can sort of take this pressure off of yourself. You don't do well when you're shutting out other people. You do really well when you're including them in your efforts. Find a way to do that. Find a way to be open to their input, even if you disagree with it. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with it. But what I'm talking about here is reestablishing your equilibrium, reestablishing your balance so that instead of feeling alone with something like only you can solve it, you take on a more balanced perspective of what it is, and that you can draw upon other people's support and their insight to get the job done and to get to where you want to go. So you can draw upon other people's insight, you can draw upon other people's support, so that in the end, you wind up doing the thing that's most important to a Libra, which is making good judgment. Now, let's say you're one of those Libras in which the dish has come down too heavily on the side of we, and there's not enough me. In other words, you are so caught up in other people's concerns, you're so caught up in making other people happy or not causing a problem, that you're too involved in their perspective. You're too involved in their point of view. You're like, okay, if I do this, this is going to upset her. Or if I do that, this is going to upset him. But maybe there's a way that I can not upset her and not upset him if I don't do anything. There must be something that I can do. And what can happen, and you can even hear it in my description, is that you can start to suffer from analysis paralysis, where you're overthinking things, where you're overanalyzing things because you're off balance. You're not looking at, one person's going to be happy and one person's not going to be as happy. That's what happens when you rule in favor of one over the other. That's what happens when you render a judgment. That's what happens even if you come up with a compromise. A successful compromise is when both people get something for their efforts, but walk away feeling dissatisfied with the result, okay? Finding that midpoint. You can't find that midpoint, which is such an important point for people born under the zodiac sign of Libra. Midpoint allows you to make good judgment. You're not going to find that midpoint if you're thrown off by trying to make other people feel happy or feeling guilty about maybe letting someone down. And so what this can also lead to is not making a choice at all. There's a phrase that the existentialist French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre had, and it goes like this: Ne pas choisir, c'est encore choisir. Not choosing is still a choice. That's something that I want you to really wrap your mind around in the next few weeks. Not choosing is still a choice. When you don't choose something, you think that you're removing yourself, you're abstaining, that you're removing yourself from the arena of conflicting choices, of conflicting demands from parties who want something from you. But you're not removing yourself from that arena at all. By not making a choice, you're still making a choice. This is something that's very important for you to understand if you're one of those Libras who's suffering from too much we and not enough me. You need to be able to render a judgment. You need to be able to hear both sides of the story and risk the possibility that one person is going to be upset and the other person is going to be absolutely thrilled and over the moon with victory. You have to risk hurting someone's feelings while awarding a prize to someone else. That is what judgment is all about. People who judge contests, people who judge Olympic events, they have to assign the person who won over all the rest who didn't win. And this is something that Librans can get very uncomfortable with, but it is something that is important for you. You need to make a choice. You need to award the prize. You need to say, this was better than that. Not only is that fulfilling who you are as an astrological sign, but it also frees you of the mindset where you go back and forth and where you're filled with fear and apprehension about hurting someone's feelings. You can hurt someone's feelings by ruling against them, or you can hurt someone's feelings by just entering the room. But you shouldn't let the feelings of other people overrule a decision, a judgment that you know is the right one to make. Remember that no choice is still a choice, and you will feel more empowered and at peace with the judgment you know you need to make. Scorpios are the torch song sign of the zodiac. Torch songs are songs of lament, usually over an unrequited love. We often associate them with bars or clubs in the late hours of the night where people are drinking and having cigarettes and just sort of commiserating with their misery. They watch the person get up there and sing this torch song, and they weep as well. They also feel this incredible regret, this incredible sadness. So there's something very much about loss with a torch song, but there's also something very triumphant about a torch song as well. Torch songs are sung by those performers who have this feeling of experience about them. The beauty of the song is in their voice, but the beauty of the song can also be in their experience, which colors the voice. Torch song singers don't usually have perfect voices. They often have actually imperfect voices, but there's something about the way that they sing that conveys this heartbreak and that conveys this lament that gets other people to say, I know exactly what that's like. I know exactly what this person is feeling. Scorpio has suffered heartbreak. Scorpio has suffered unrequited love, but it has not been broken by it. This idea of heartbreak, but not being broken by it, is a very Scorpionic idea, because Scorpios actually take strength from the pain that they have felt. They are reborn in a moment of triumph. I will survive. I will go on. I will move past this heartbreak. But they don't reject the heartbreak. They actually treasure the heartbreak. The heartbreak becomes almost like a sacred object for a Scorpio. So during this period of time when there is a solar eclipse in the zodiac sign of Libra, this may be a period of time in which you feel this coming back again. Maybe it's the result of a relationship. Maybe it's the result of not being in a relationship because of what had happened before. Scorpio and Libra, as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, were once the same zodiac sign. They were once combined by the ancient Greeks into one constellation. So there is an affinity that exists between Scorpio and Libra. Libra may be uncomfortable with the dark emotions of Scorpio, with the intensity of Scorpio, with Scorpio's feelings of retaliation against injustice. But at the same time, Libra gets it. Okay, Libra feels an affinity for that. Scorpios may be drawn to the lightness of Libra. They may be drawn to the grace of Libra. Remember that Libra is ruled by Venus and Scorpio is ruled by Mars. And Venus and Mars have a lot of history in Greek mythology. They actually form more long-lasting relationships with other deities, but there is something about Venus and Mars which always draws them back to one another again. So what could be happening with the solar eclipse in Libra in a very sensitive part of your solar horoscope? It actually even takes place in your blind spot because Libra is a sign which precedes Scorpio. It's close to Scorpio. You can feel one another in terms of proximity, but you can't really see one another at the same time. What can happen during this solar eclipse is that another impossible love may be coming into your life. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. It could be very straightforward that you fall in love with someone new, but also someone very recognizable, very familiar to you. The name may be different, the background may be completely different, but there's still a sense of you know what this person is like. You've been with this type of person before. Now, it would be nice if you could just go ahead and consummate things. If you could just, profess your love to one another, fall into one another's arms, and begin your relationship and take care of all those things that had happened in the past. It would be nice if it could work like one of those lovely fairy tales where, someone kisses you on the lips and you wake up and, they're your spouse forever. But that's not really the way things like that happen in life. And that's not really the way that things like that happen in astrology. You may find yourself being resistant to what's going on. You might say, okay, I know this story. I know this torch song. I've sung it so many times in the past, and I'm not interested in repeating it. But at the same time, you may feel very drawn, very attracted to this person as well. And don't be surprised if some of the same familiar things start happening again. Maybe non-responses, they're involved in another relationship, they're battling inner demons, and they want you to come into their lives and help you battle those inner demons with them. There will be something that feels very familiar. And if you turn to your loved ones and friends, they may even warn you and say, no, 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 you've just gotten over this. Don't go and repeat this again. And of course, being a Scorpio, if you're being told not to repeat something again or to set up boundaries or treat things differently, you're not going to honor that. You're not going to obey that. You're going to go right to what had gone on before. Now, this isn't because you're committed to self-sabotage or ruining your own life. What it is that you want to find out why this keeps happening over and over again. Either you're going to get it right, and so finally, by getting it right, score the relationship that you've always wanted, or you want to get at the truth. You want to excavate, to uncover that thing that keeps damning you to this type of pattern again. So as this relationship evolves, it might be romantic, but it might also be platonic. It may have nothing to do with romance at all, or it might take place in the workplace or some sort of situation in which the circumstances compromise what's going to take place. As this relationship evolves, you have a chance to really ask the questions you wanted to ask. You have a chance to really follow through with those feelings or those decisions. Don't take the passive role this time. Don't be the person that these things are happening to. Don't be the person who's pining away or waiting to hear the response of the other person. This person isn't holding your love life over you. Whether you have a love life or not isn't going to rely on this person. This person doesn't have any power over you other than the power that you want to hand over. Libra is a sign of balance. It's about trying to find or rebalance, to correct a balance of something that's been imbalanced. Let's say you've handed over the power, the fate of your love to the person that you fall in love with, and your heart is in their hands. This time you'll do that, but then follow through. Realize your heart really isn't in their hands. You've been through this before. This isn't your first rodeo. So what you want to do is find that space in which your emotions are intense, but your mind is intense too. Okay, think of the two dishes and the scale. Live in your emotions, but don't ignore your mind. Don't ignore your wit. Don't ignore your sarcasm. Don't ignore your hard-earned experience. One doesn't have to poison the other, okay? Your cynicism doesn't have to make a mockery of your feelings, and your feelings don't have to override your cynicism. Why do I use the word cynicism? Cynicism, skepticism is a Scorpio's intellectual way of putting on the brakes. It's a Scorpio's intellectual way of not letting themselves get overwhelmed. And that can be through a caustic remark, or that can be through a very funny line, okay? But it's their way of kind of like stepping outside the intensity and commenting on it and sort of bringing down the life or death stakes of it all. What the solar eclipse can potentially do is actually release you from this story. Romances are like ghost stories, our romantic patterning that we do in our life, the people that we fall in love with, the people that we yearn to be with, in which things, fall apart or break apart. Not everyone has this, okay? But for people who keep experiencing this over and over again, it's like a ghost story. Like when you spend a night at a castle. Like, when's the last time anyone spent a night at a castle? But anyway, okay, just follow me on this one. You spend a night at a castle, all right? If you spend a night at a castle and you're woken from your slumbers by groaning and moaning and the shaking of chains, a ghost, you open up the door and a fleeting spirit races past and you're like, what's that? And you're full of fear and the dawn rises and it stops. But then the next night, it repeats with the shaking of chains and groaning and moaning and sobbing and crying, and a fleeting ghost goes past. Okay, you can either leave the castle and say, oh my God, whoa, that's like haunted, like it's really funky. Or you can get to the bottom of things. Scorpios are natural ghost detectives, okay? You want to get to the bottom of things, and that's what this solar eclipse in Libra is giving you an opportunity to do. I would encourage you to, even if you know it's not a good thing to do, to pursue this relationship, to go through with this relationship, even if you suffer the same things that you suffered before, even if you experience unrequited love. You're doing it this time to understand your personal pattern. Why does a ghost keep returning to a special spot in the castle? Or why does a ghost keep returning to a haunting? Okay, because there's an unresolved issue. Maybe they were murdered in a horrible way, or they lost their baby and killed themselves, or maybe they don't know they're dead, or something like that. They're returning by haunting a castle or a residence over and over and over again until they're released from it. The secret is revealed, or the information that was denied them is told them, or they have a complete, rethink, like in The Others with Nicole Kidman, where she realizes she's not being haunted, but she's doing the haunting. There's something in which the perspective has to change because the secret is exposed, or the thing that was keeping you locked in this haunting or in this pattern of loving has to be released. This is what the solar eclipse in Libra is offering you. Now, things could become consummated, it's wonderful, and you have a great relationship, and that's it. That could happen, and that would be wonderful. That would be like so fantastic. But for those of you in which that's not happening, or maybe it's in the life of someone close to you, a close friend, or a child, or a relative, that they're living a pattern in a relationship that you recognize all too well. Okay, so even if it doesn't involve you personally, it may involve you in a sort of like adjacent way, where it's happening to someone you have an opportunity to either observe in yourself a pattern that's repeating, or to observe in someone who's very close to you a pattern that's repeating. And you have an opportunity to uncover the secret, to come up with the answer, either for yourself or for this person. And what that will do, like with any good ghost story, is that it will put to rest a troubling aspect of yourself that you've had to deal with over and over. It will lay it to rest. It will make peace with this very troubled part of you, so that you can leave this haunting. You can leave this repetition of a pattern that repeats over and over again, and you could head towards the light. Okay, as they say in those ghost movies, you could head towards the light, which is basically enlightenment, or a recognition of your patterns and leaving them behind and choosing something that you want, so that maybe you can go and choose something that's healthier, and you can choose something that's more accessible, and you can choose a relationship that has a better chance of working out. Hey, Sagittarius. This solar eclipse taking place in the zodiac sign of Libra is going to be quite beneficial for you. That's because Libra is an air sign, and you were born under a fire sign. Air signs and fire signs get along. Air signs and fire signs are complementary elements in astrology. Astrology is made up of 4 elements: water, earth, air, and fire. Water and earth are regarded as the feminine or the yin elements, the yin energies, and air and fire are regarded as the masculine or the yang energies. They're very active and they're very activating. So what happens when there is a lunar eclipse in the zodiac sign of Libra, it becomes supportive of your Sagittarian energy. It becomes supportive of your faith. It becomes supportive of your belief in yourself. It becomes supportive of your optimism, and it becomes supportive of your quest to connect to a higher purpose in your own life. So this solar eclipse in Libra on October 2nd shows that this is a period of time when you are truly coming into your own. But you are not coming into your own by yourself. Fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, have a tendency to do things by themselves, that they need to go on these quests or these adventures or face these challenges or be recognized for the wonderful person that they are. They come into themselves. Being the best self that you can possibly be is always something that a fire sign is aspiring to be. But when you add the zodiac sign of Libra to it, that adds we, the word we, W-E, to the word me, which is a fire sign word, which is, being the best me that I can be. So you're coordinating your own personal wants and aspirations with the wants and aspirations of other people. So how is this going to work out for you? The solar eclipse of Libra will be taking place in that part of your solar chart that deals with hopes and wishes and benefactors. So the idea of hopes and wishes, it's always been connected to the 11th house in an astrological chart, is also interconnected with the people who can help you to realize your hopes and wishes. Okay, a hope and a wish is something that you put out there that people come into your life and they may recognize. They may recognize in you a special talent. They may recognize in you an ability. They may recognize in you a special sort of something that makes you unlike everyone else. Maybe it's a star quality or a leadership quality of some sort. And what happens is that these people then go on to play an instrumental role in your life in helping you to develop that. So in other words, you're not sort of like hitting a tennis ball against a wall and hitting it back and forth again all by yourself. You're coming under the tutelage of a coach or a mentor or someone who can help you develop your abilities to the best that they can be. So this solar eclipse in Libra either introduces someone into your life, in which that will be the relationship. They will be like your coach or your mentor, maybe even your sponsor. They see in you a special quality and they're going to help you to develop your potential. Or it may be that you've been working in a certain area of your life for a long time and suddenly you've caught the notice of a manager or a supervisor, someone who's higher up on the ladder than you are at work, and they've decided, you know what? You've reached a point where I can start focusing on you individually. You've been working at this job long enough and you've done good things, and I know what is needed to make you go further than where you are right now. So this is the energy that you're going to be experiencing. It's not just sort of like being at the Hollywood soda fountain and someone discovering you and saying, sign that person, they're going to be the next star. It's not that. It's not like being discovered and like, oh, yay, or something along those lines. What it is someone saying to you, I wasn't sure if you had it, but now I can see through your commitment, your dedication, and your discipline that you do have it. So let's work together to take you further. Let's work together to make you a success. So it's not this person doing all the work. It's you coordinating your efforts with this person, with you taking on, as I said, a mentee or sort of tutelage, or maybe even an apprentice situation where this person is going to become much more involved in honing your talents and your skills. So you have to give a little bit more than just showing up. You have to honor what this person is doing. You have to respect what this person is doing, and you have to do your homework. This person's going to work with you, but then when you're not working with that person, you have to do your homework. You have to play that violin. You have to hit that tennis ball. You have to practice on your own and to hone your skills and talents and abilities so that it becomes a coordinated effort and not just a solo effort. So if you invest that time, if you invest that energy, you're not only going to realize your potential and harness your talent, you're going to become a greater success than you ever imagined you could be. Hey Capricorn, this solar eclipse taking place in the zodiac sign of Libra on October 2nd is going to be a bit of a double-edged sword for you. On one hand, it brings good news. Good news when you hear that someone is interested in a creative collaboration. Now, this could be someone who's well-known in their field, someone you've always dreamed of wanting to work with, or it could be someone that you worked with before, who has circled back and got back in touch with you. So you're going to feel all sorts of excited. This is something that you're very much looking forward to, this creative collaboration, this creative partnership. But things might not go as swimmingly as you expect. That's what happens when you have a square between two zodiac signs. A square can be a combative or a competitive element. The best way to think of a square is kind of like a arm wrestling contest between two planets, where each planet is fighting to get the upper hand. So you're locked in this arm wrestling contest. You're not going to retreat from it, but you're struggling to either get the other planet down or that other planet is struggling to get you down. So this is what's going to be going on as a result of the solar eclipse in Libra, which is a zodiac sign that squares your sign of Capricorn. So what could be the discordant element? What could be the thing that goes wrong? What's the blemish on this perfectly realized opportunity? What's going to happen is that you'll soon see that something you expected to be a shoo-in suddenly becomes an obstacle course. When that person says, well, you're one of a number of candidates for this position, so you're going to have to audition for the role. You'll have to interview for the position. Maybe even submit some sample work or prove yourself in some capacity. Being a Capricorn, you're not going to like that idea at all. Part of you will balk. You'll say things like, well, my record speaks for itself. Or, why did you seek me out in the first place if you didn't think that I was good for this position? Or, I shouldn't have to prove myself. I'm very accomplished and well known at the things that I do. Well, this is what squares do. They always introduce that feeling of competition into something that should have been harmonious and nice. Now, you could always say, I'm above all of this. You know, I've done my time. I've shown how accomplished I am in this field, and this is beneath me. And you can depart the arena, or you can embrace the contest. Capricorns have a deep fear of rejection. Fear of rejection is a Capricorn's Achilles heel. Fear of rejection is a Capricorn's fatal flaw. Now, most people don't see that in you once you become an adult. You've become very polished, you've become very hardworking, and you always produce results. So people don't really think of you as having insecurity or apprehension. But all it takes is one swift little whiff of the threat of rejection, and you are transported back in time to your school days when you were never chosen by either team for softball, or when you were left alone sulking in a corner of the sandbox while the other children played, made jokes, and laughed merrily. So this is something that Capricorns are always covering up, but it's always a raw nerve. So this idea that you have to prove yourself again, this idea that you have to audition or interview, it will freeze your heart. It will send a chill down your spine. But I have 3 words of advice for you, and those 3 words are, get over it. You're better than you know. You've come a long way since the softball teams and the sandboxes of your youth. I want you to embrace this challenge. I want you to get into the spirit of competition and to re-enter that arena, because this gives you an opportunity to showcase your talents in a new and flattering light. Hello, Aquarius. The solar eclipse in Libra on October 2nd is a very supportive and benevolent one for you. In fact, it's really quite fantastic. And the reason for this is because of the trining energy that exists between Aquarius and Libra. A trine between signs means an agreement, an understanding, and unconditional support. Libra is an air sign just like you. In fact, the three air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Air signs are all about the intellect. Air signs are all about people. Air signs are all about relationships and coordinating efforts. Air signs believe that no man or woman is an island and that we are all interconnected with one another. This is what makes the air signs bridge builders in astrology. So when there is an air trine between Libra and Aquarius, you can expect something beneficial. The benefit will be coming from the solar eclipse that's taking place in Libra. A solar eclipse is when the moon moves in front of the sun and blocks its rays from being seen. You will be filled with an urgency. You will be filled with an insistence on this October 2nd, when the solar eclipse takes place. And you will have this feeling of having an epiphany. What is an epiphany? You're probably familiar with the idea. It's when clouds part and there's a chorus of angels that sing, and suddenly something is imagined and seen. It's an epiphany. It's a realization. The clouds come back together again. All goes back to normal in your life, and you know that you've been changed and that you've discovered a new direction and a new path. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be treated to a choir of angels singing to you on October 2nd, but what you will have is a sense of urgency, of intensity, that something has been opened up inside of you, but because of the nature of a solar eclipse, you don't really see what it is. You don't really understand what it is. You feel it, you've been moved by it, but you can't really articulate it. You can't really describe it, and you certainly cannot explain it. Aquarius is a very future-oriented sign. There are zodiac signs that are very past-oriented. They can be very nostalgic or sentimental or feel like their best days are behind them. With Aquarius, it's a feeling like the best days lie still ahead. So there's always a future push for Aquarians. Nowadays, we're told to be our authentic selves. And so we want to grow into the person that we were always meant to be. So there's this feeling of fulfilling who you are, fulfilling who you were always meant to be. And that sense of an authentic self or connecting to a real, genuine self is very present tense. You know, am I being my authentic self right now? Am I being true to who I am right now? Aquarius's commitment is to that future self. So where being true to yourself can be very present tense, Aquarius's commitment is to a future self that hasn't been realized or expressed yet. This is the kind of future-orientedness that an Aquarius can have. They can be very concerned about the future of the world, the future of the planet, the future of society. These are things that very much absorb an Aquarius. But this idea of staying true to a self that you haven't become yet is very Aquarian. So what this solar eclipse is going to trigger in you is this feeling that you've just received a calling card from your future self. You just got a quick little glimpse of how things can be. But when the clouds came back together again and you return to normal, to your life here and now, you don't really have a strong idea or a clear idea of what it is. So this new path that's opened up in front of you is one that's going to feel more like a search. Are you trying to recapture that epiphany? Are you trying to remember it like a dream that you had the night before that's disappearing even as you wake up in the morning? Or is it this feeling that you're going to travel down a road that you don't really have the answers? You don't really know where you're going, except that you know that you're traveling down a different road and that you'll know where it's leading when you get there, or you'll know where it's leading along the way. So what you're going to receive over the next 6 months, very intensely actually, between now and your birthday, but it will proceed for the next 6 months. What you're going to get are these little signs, these little signals, these little hints. Just when you feel like you're sort of accepting where you are right now in your life, or you're going back to your day-to-day routine, or you're making plans like you usually make them, all of a sudden you'll get this sense of, no, I need to go in this direction. I need to go in this different direction. I've discovered the next clue. I think what I'm trying to describe here to you is kind of like a scavenger hunt, except you don't really know what you're looking for, but you will discover that thing on the scavenger hunt that you didn't know you were looking for, but you know you were looking for when you discover it. I know that sounds a little abstract, but it's the best way I can describe it. It will be just enough to sort of be like, oh, I'm on a scavenger hunt and I found an important clue, but not enough to promise where you're going. So there's kind of this in the dark quality to what I see unfolding. So what I want you to really focus on are things like conversations that you have with people, maybe even overheard snippets, maybe an exchange that takes place that seems really random. I want you to focus on these things because there will be certain exchanges of information or words, or maybe ideas that are floated out that you'll find yourself suddenly seizing upon. You'll find yourself being like, this is it. This is it. This is what I've been looking for. And what's happening here is that the universe has chosen, and the universe does this all the time. The universe always chooses strange mouthpieces to speak to us, things that we wouldn't really acknowledge as being universal or that profound. But that's what the universe chooses, are these sort of strange mouthpieces. And you'll hear these things. But what's really happening here is that the universe is laying these breadcrumbs, okay, that are leading you to where you want to go. It could be to a place that you've never been to before. It could be relocating to pursue an opportunity that was the furthest thing from your mind. It's so far-fetched, it's so unlikely, it's so unpredictable. But nevertheless, there is this sense of a fatedness about this. So follow these breadcrumbs. Follow these breadcrumbs where they lead. And I'm not sure if you're going to get there in the next 6 months. Actually, I sort of feel like this is something that's going to be unfolding throughout 2025. But in the next 6 months, you're going to have a clearer and clearer idea of where it's going. And that instead of just sort of blindly following from one thing to another, you can start piecing together what you see happening. And so that sense of discovery and that sense of realization, that's going to fill you with a sense of purpose, which is unshakable and which will ultimately take you in the direction that you've been wanting to go all along. Hello, Pisces. This solar eclipse in Libra that's taking place on October 2nd is going to be a little bit odd. It's going to introduce a lesson about relationships that you didn't think you had to learn. To begin with, love and relationships are ruled by two separate elements in astrology. Love is ruled by water, and relationship is ruled by air. The solar eclipse on October 2nd gives you an opportunity to understand this difference by bringing a relationship into your life or by deepening a relationship that you're already involved in. Now, being a Pisces, you love to splash around in the emotions of other people. You understand other people through empathy, through sympathy, through compassion and rapport. Pisces is a natural empath of astrology. It's always picking up on the feelings that other people have. And in many ways, because Pisces is so deep and so profound, it can be very giving and it can be very understanding. It can be drawn to people who struggle to understand their feelings. Pisces can provide the silent understanding. Pisces can provide the soulful embrace. And Pisces can provide the gentle smile of recognition that another person is looking for. Pisces will often draw people into their lives who might not be as emotionally deep as Pisces is, but nevertheless are restored and refreshed by being in the presence of Pisces and Pisces love. A relationship is made up of three parts. There's me, there's you, and there's the relationship. If we go and reinvoke the image of Libra, there's a dish, and that could be one person. There's another dish, and that could be another person. And both dishes are attached by chains to a unifying bar, and that's the relationship itself. This is the way that Libra looks at a relationship. There's me, there's you, and there's the relationship itself. What's interesting here, and this is why air rules over relationships, air understands that people are different from one another, even if they're in a relationship. A lot of romantic imagery talks about mixing and blending and becoming one person. And for anyone who's been involved in a relationship, you already know that that's not going to happen. You may have certain values, thoughts, and feelings, and they're not automatically going to be the values, the thoughts, and feelings of your partner. Your hope is that you can find common ground, a place where you can meet and maybe see eye to eye on a few points, but you know that your approach to matters, your perspective on things is always going to be different. Maybe it's at odds, or maybe it's in harmony. Maybe it clashes with another person, or maybe it takes up a complementary approach in which one partner supports the other partner. They're not the same, but they complement or harmonize with one another. Now, the water expectation and the Piscean expectation is that souls mix and blend and they come together. They understand one another on a very deep and profound way. The idea of a relationship from a Libran perspective is a separateness in which you bridge the gap between the two people through a pledge, through a betrothal, through a contract, through an agreement. Librans take relationships very seriously. In fact, some Librans will even take on the responsibility of looking out for the relationship itself. All relationships require some kind of sacrifice. All relationships require some kind of compromise. These compromises aren't yielding the field. These compromises are about finding new fits, about finding new ways of getting along. And this is what keeps the conversation going in a relationship. This is what keeps a relationship dynamic. It's not losing oneself in another person and merging into some sort of like uni-self. It's by maintaining separateness and difference and individuality, not to the exclusion of the other person, but in following, honoring, and respecting the bond, the relationship that brings the two people together. As you might imagine, this doesn't really translate to the Piscean experience of things. Pisces is always feeling things on a very deep and profound emotional level. Because of their sympathy, because of their compassion, there's always a sort of avant-garde sensibility. So Aquarians are very absorbed with what that future looks like because of their ability to read emotions in this beautifully fluid and profound way. People born under Pisces can sometimes assume that they're more emotionally deep than the other person is. In other words, Pisces may be drawn to someone's emotions. They may know that that person feels the same things that they feel, and that person may very well feel the same things that they feel and yearn for it and want to meet the Pisces for that kind of depth. But then there could also happen in a relationship where the person doesn't go that deep, or the person maybe decides that they don't want to go that deep. Maybe the partner in the relationship doesn't want to talk about their feelings all the time, or doesn't want to talk about their feelings to the depth that a Pisces wants to talk about and experience them. Now, this is something that can happen a lot to people born under the zodiac sign of Pisces. They're more emotionally true to the relationship. They know what those feelings are. They might even come from the point of view that I'm only showing you feelings that you know that you have, that you know that you share with me. Why can't you give in to these feelings? Why can't you just let them be? And the other person may feel like I'm going to make different choices about my feelings. I don't want to go that deep, or I don't know if I want to feel those feelings all the time, or I can feel those feelings at certain times of the day, but there are going to be other times of the day when I'm not feeling those feelings. And why isn't that all right? So the lesson that this solar eclipse in Libra is trying to teach Pisces is one that's not too dissimilar from what I spoke about when I was talking about Taurus. There is a tendency for Pisces to kind of like annex the emotional territory of its partner, to say, come on in, the water's fine. You can open up with your feelings here. And I know that you feel things as deeply and profoundly as I do. And not everyone feels things as deeply and profoundly as a Pisces does. Now, that can create a sense of separateness, and that can even create a sense of disappointment or even sorrow. But if you can get into this idea, Pisces, that a relationship isn't about mixing and merging and becoming one, that there are two dishes that are held by a contract or compact or an agreement, that there are going to be times when you may feel more deeply than your partner does, and that's all right. And going to be times in which your partner may want to talk about things that aren't really resonant for you, that don't really do something for you on a deep and profound level, and that your response shouldn't be rolling your eyes or being bored, but that your partner is actually trying to talk about something that really matters to them, but it may not have the same emotional impact that you expect. If you can sort of understand differences that people have, that you are 9 times out of 10 going to be the more emotionally deep one, but that people don't have to swim down to your depth to enjoy a really wonderful relationship, that maybe you don't have to be the feeler all the time, that maybe you can learn things from your partner, that maybe your partner can bring things to your life that are different in their experiences. If you can also learn to sort of respect when someone puts down their own boundaries, and not make them feel bad for not meeting you all the time on your deep emotional level. If you can do this, I think you can really enjoy an added dimension to your relationships, something that perhaps has been missing in previous relationships, but that you can enjoy this added dimension. You can enjoy that person for who they are, and that person can in turn enjoy you for who you are. And this may bring about the most delightful and the most fulfilling relationship that you've ever had. If you enjoyed what you saw, please press the like button. It helps more than you know. If you could subscribe, that would be wonderful. I've had such a wonderful time visiting with you this week, and I can't wait to get together next time on Christopher Renstrom Astrology.